This is going to be a bit controversial. When a minister in power has his family controlling majority of the ethanol manufacturing and sales, they control the prices and there is a monopoly happening. Can we question it?
BS6 Diesel versus BS6 Petrol. I'm talking about normal passenger vehicles, passenger cars. It's actually less polluting than a BS6 Petrol.
True, that's true. It's about 2.3 times lower in terms of emission than a BS6 petrol car.
What is CAFE norms? Can you give me the full form?
CAFE norms is cumulative average fuel economy. Kia Seltos diesel versus the Kia Seltos petrol turbo. Petrol turbo would be making anywhere around 120 to 125 grams per kilometer. Diesel would be down to 85. Diesel cars which are much less emitting than petrol cars.
What's up, guys? Aradhya Gupta here from Internal Combustion, and first of all, a very, very happy new year to all of you, all the viewers. And first of all, I'd like to personally thank all my viewers. बहुत प्यार मिला है, so many people, because I've been missing in action for the past 8 to 9 months, because of personal reasons. But I got input from so many people that, where are the podcasts gone? But now we are back. And the first podcast of the new year is going to be with a bang with Mr. Ishan Bhardwaj, aka the Race Monkey. We have done a couple of podcasts earlier also, which went quite successful. And today also we are going to be having a conversation about some very interesting topics that include topics like ethanol, global NCAP crash testing, Bharat NCAP crash testing, the introduction of EVs, particularly coming out of the Indian OEMs. So I think without further ado, what's happening?
What's up? We are back with a bang again.
Yes. अब पता नहीं आज कितना बड़ा bang होने वाला है, but
last time though we created a huge explosion. In fact, our content about Ford, our content about a lot of things
that took another direction altogether.
Yeah. So that Hyundai used in that car was very good. It did not have any rusting issues, no bubbling issues. Every time I meet people from the industry, they're like, "Bhai, ज़्यादा हो गया था." इतना नहीं बोलना था.
I still remember that Ford wala video that you had reposted.
Yeah.
The kind of comments, people actually got emotional because people were able to relate to it, because Ford used to make such fantastic cars. I owned one, so I know it for sure.
No, they still do. Unfortunately, I'm connected to the people at Ford who were there, who moved to different organizations now. And whenever we sit down and we talk about it, I mean, we still have that void of Ford. In fact, a lot of people, even today, when they want to upgrade a car from an Endeavor, like just yesterday, I was having a word with one of my family members, and he was like, I have an Endeavor and I want to upgrade to another SUV, which is as good as an Endeavor. And I have a budget of 50-55 lakhs. What can I get?
Nothing.
So you can't. You can't. At most, what you can do is extend your budget, get a Grand Cherokee, but then you won't get that same feeling.
Dude, I picked up the Endeavor in 2016, if I'm not wrong, for 33 lakhs. आज आप imagine कर लो, Fortuner, no questions about it. It's a great and probably one of the most reliable machines.
Yeah.
But for what Endeavor gave you today, Fortuner is not even half as close to what Endeavor gave you for, I think, double the price.
Ford had a very deep focus on getting a quality product to the Indian consumer.
Totally.
And that outlook helped them retain their customers even after their demise in the country. And it's just sad and unfortunate that we have certain policies and laws that have been pushed down our throat that don't allow us to keep the cars for a prolonged period. Fortunately, some states do have that benefit. Like us in Delhi NCR, we see so many people who've had their Endeavors, who've crossed 1 lakh kilometers, and they still say, my car starts with half a crank. And making a car which is that reliable, that good, for years to come, and people still don't want to get loose of them. And they have to, by the pressure, by the virtue of the policies. It just feels sad, and it's also a very huge statement for a lot of manufacturers to understand that there has been a manufacturer in the industry who still thought of the consumer first, who still thought of giving a nice solid product, which we slowly got away from, and now we are at a time where things are completely different from what it was 10 years ago.
And I feel people actually absorbed, it took a while, a few years for people to actually absorb what the Endeavour actually is, because people still had the older Endeavour in their heads, क्योंकि उसके अंदर क्या था, the comfort level was not good. It was a very solid, robust machine. It was a bloody tank. But then again, because उसमें पीछे there were leaf springs. So the back seat was horrendous. The engine was good. It was very reliable. It was out of the Ford Ranger, like even now. It was basically straight out of the pickup truck. And it took a few years. Like I remember I was one of the first ones actually to pick up, not the first one, but one of the first ones to actually take that plunge. Ki, chalo yaar, it's a 5-cylinder diesel. It sounds good, sounds crazy. It's got that grunt. 500 Newton meters of torque almost out of the factory. It was like that's crazy amount of torque.
That's unthinkable even today. I mean, manufacturers are trying to push. You've got the MG Cluster, we've got the Fortuner, which is almost close to the power figures of what we had in the Ford Endeavour, but they still can't be as good as that car.
It was very generous in terms of the engine size, 3.2 liter engine. मतलब you can't even today some of the very expensive cars also 3 liter से ऊपर जा ही नहीं रहे.
Ford, वापस आ जाओ.
Please, I'll buy one.
But it's a long, arduous process for the brand to come back. I mean, internally we know that there are a lot of problems, there are a lot of challenges that the brand has to face, because even if it comes back, there is a generational gap even with their modern products globally when it comes to packaging and competing, although initially it will sell really well. But Ford would require a solid plan.
They'll really have to target a certain kind of people. And I'm sure they have all kinds of data for that. And, if like, for example, I think how Skoda has been able to market the VRS. Limited units lekar aate hain, but before they launch, it's all sold out. Golf, it's something similar happened with Golf. Although these numbers are very small, I think VRS, 1,000 units?
100 units.
100 units, sorry.
That's very less.
So, Endeavour ki jo fan following hai, I think they've got they can have like very good clarity in terms of marketing, and that push if Ford is able to make it, because they've got some legendary cars. एक तरीके से जिसका कह सकते हैं the Endeavour is sort of a baby of, I don't know, cars like the F-150, the Ranger Raptor, the Explorer, the Bronco. So they have that thing in their DNA that they make such kind of SUVs that you just, even if you throw them off the cliff, people inside the car will be alive and the car won't break down.
No, that is something that will work, but again, it all has to come down to making business sense. Once the company is in debt and there is a huge amount of money that's hanging like a knife on top, that one has to pay back and then function as an entity. It becomes a very challenging exercise for a brand like Ford to do a comeback. What I've been told, and I want it to be a reality, is that Ford is wanting to get back with imported products, CBU cars. But this was spoken about in the starting of last year when we had a podcast on Auto Expo, which fortunately did not come. But if at all they plan and they have a sense of urgency to bring back the products, I think it's going to be a huge success, because there are people, not just tasteful, but people who have a good need and want for a great quality product that Ford was supplying. I think even if they could bring 500 units of Ford Endeavour, we can see them fly off within 2-3 days.
Instantly, almost the same day, I think.
I'll take one of those.
But I think at the same time, Ford knows what is happening in the Indian automobile industry with respect to, I don't know whether respect or not, but just for discussion's sake.
Yeah.
The whole emissions control thing that is happening in the automobile industry.
That's
And उसमें कई सारी चीजें हुई हैं, about which one of the things I would want to understand better from a person like you is ethanol-blended fuel. पहली बात तो इसके अंदर how I would want to start the conversation is that why has this all started? What was it supposed to lead to? And has it led to that?
So let's break down the entire project of ethanol blending into 3-4 parts. Number one,
You want to wear bulletproof jackets?
No, I don't want to.
Okay.
I think wearing a green sweater is good enough. Ethanol as a fuel is great for the environment. That is proven. Another thing is it helps cut down on the imports that the government currently has. So there are two ways the government is producing oil. There is local production that happens in certain states and certain refineries in India, which is not used for the local supply. That's not used for the public. That's used for the defense. Very few people know about this, but all the fuel that's imported from the countries outside Russia, Saudi, etc., that is what comes to the refinery of Indian Oil, HPCL, and other companies, and then supplied to public in general. But whatever is manufactured in India, whatever is refined in India, it is produced locally in India, that's used for the defense. So the dependence of fuel that is imported for the defense is zero. If that fuel was ever used for the public, we would have seen petrol prices of about 35-40 rupees a litre. Because it's that cheap to manufacture. Since there are imports, there are taxes involved, then the government imposes its own cess, tax, whatever it puts on. That's why we have expensive fuel. And then ethanol, technically with 20% blending, should have costed less because ethanol as a product costs less to manufacture. But we know how politically things happened, which I would not want to go for security reasons. But there is a blind side that was created to the public that ethanol is an expensive thing to manufacture. And when it is blended, it comes out to be more expensive than what petrol is, and the government is trying to curb down, which is not true. If we would have seen the reality of how ethanol blended fuel, when sold to the public, when the real prices, if they were to be put down, we would have seen a reduction of at least 20% in fuel prices. That did not happen. So that's number one. Number three, the way ethanol is pushed to the people is not something which is ethical. There always has to be a step-by-step way of pushing down certain things which are important to the public. Now, fuel is essential for logistics, it's essential for everyone to move around. It's something that helps them work because they use their vehicles to go to work, etc., etc., etc. When E5 was here in our country, when E10 was pushed into our country, there was a step-by-step process when it was brought. E20, rather it being an option for E20 compliant cars to be used with, it was imposed completely into the country that every fuel pump should have E20, and that happened with urgency. That caused a huge havoc.
In fact, I still remember, I'm sorry to cut you in the middle, but I was just, this is about a few months ago, ऐसे ही I गया गाड़ी refuel कराने के लिए, and उस पे लिखा हुआ था नॉर्मल पेट्रोल, ग्रीन कलर का जो बैज होता है. पहले बीच में इन लोगों ने किया भी था कि E20 का अलग पंप लगाया हुआ है एंड नॉर्मल पेट्रोल इट्स अ सेपरेट पंप. तो देन सडनली आई सॉ दैट वो E20 वाला जो है वो हटा ही दिया है, वो सिर्फ पेट्रोल लिखा हुआ है ग्रीन में. तो आई आस्क्ड हिम कि इज दिस नॉर्मल पेट्रोल? बोला हाँ, इज दिस नॉर्मल पेट्रोल. तो देन पता नहीं वो दूसरा बंदा वहाँ घूम रहा था, उसका सीनियर, मैंने उससे पूछा कि इज दिस नॉर्मल पेट्रोल? बोला नहीं, दिस हैज 20% एथेनॉल। अब पहले से ही आ रहा है उसके अंदर। मैंने कहा पहली बात तो आप दोनों को क्लैरिटी है, मेरे को ये नहीं समझ में आ रहा कि सच क्या है। So that kind of started giving me doubts that why is there no clarity? I mean, ऐसी चीजों के लिए तो एटलीस्ट पंप लेवल पे तो क्लैरिटी होनी चाहिए।
You're talking about pump level. Pump owners did not know about it. So when they get the bill from the depot, even that did not have a proper sign saying that this is an E20 fuel for at least 3-4 weeks. I have a few friends who are pump owners, and they showed me their invoices, and they're like, we are not aware if it's an E20 fuel or not. But the thing is, it is an E20 fuel. And that sort of created havoc in the entire market, because till August, September, when it was imposed in our country, almost 95% of the cars manufactured by then were not E20 compliant.
Two things. One is that you mentioned that the government was, the way they pushed ethanol out to the public, they said that it is going to be expensive to manufacture. पता नहीं, मुझे ये याद आ रहा है कि इन लोगों ने तो बल्कि ये बोला था कि एथेनॉल यहाँ बनेगा तो दो चीज़ें होंगी कि लोकल जो इम्पोर्ट्स हो रहे हैं, लोकल नहीं सॉरी, जो इम्पोर्ट्स हो रहे हैं वो कम होगा, प्लस फ्यूल विल बिकम चीपर, which actually did not end up happening. And then people started questioning कि अगर आपके फ्यूल में तो 20 या 25% जो भी एथेनॉल है तो वो सस्ता क्यों नहीं है? पहली बात तो वो गाड़ियाँ ख़राब कर रहा है, about which we'll have a discussion later. दूसरा, it's the same price which was earlier, so people felt actually kind of cheated.
This is going to be a bit controversial, but when a minister in power has his family controlling majority of the ethanol manufacturing and sales, and there is a monopoly happening, not duopoly, monopoly happening with that. They control the prices. When it's become a policy, when it's become a mandate for every oil supplier to sell E20, and there's only one entity or one major family which is supplying ethanol to all these oil companies, they decide on the price. Can we question it? In reality, no. Hypothetically, yes, we should. We should go out, we should protest, we should ask the minister in power who is putting this down our throat. But
which I think they did.
We had one specific event, which I posted a video about as well, where a very respected auto journalist, Mr. Hormaz Sarabji, who I hugely admire, he was having an interview with Mr. Nitin Gadkari, and he asked a few questions which were scripted. Mr. Nitin Gadkari had his side of the answers. Hormaz Sarabji had his questions on a sheet of paper. He puts down the sheet of paper, goes off the record, and not off the record, but off the script, and asks as to what's the roadmap.
What are the assurances, or what is the roadmap for higher blends
for the ethanol blending program in India? And the minister in power kept on giving examples of Brazil, kept on giving examples of how it's going to be the same script that we've all been listening to at different occasions, which are irritated. And that sort of opened up a lot of people's eyes as to how deeply rooted this entire problem is. I was about to use some other word, but for political reasons I won't. But even if you are at the top of the cream, you can't question them. I've faced a few issues lately. When I went on, after this ethanol blending program was being pushed through social media, through different influencers, I perhaps was the first one to whistleblow about it, because I understood how deeply rooted this problem was. There was a lot of money involved. We're talking about 3 figures plus crores. And in ad revenue for about a month full of influencing to people that it is a good thing, which it is not. There was a sense of urgency that was created amongst people who are influential in the market to spread the word about ethanol being a good thing. Neither were problems discussed, neither were the steps discussed as to how we transition into it. Ethanol globally has not been an issue.
Why? How come?
Again, financially, economically, if you see for every country that we spoke about, imports go down. Environmentally, it is good. The cars and bikes which are having ethanol-specific material compliance, if the material compliance is there for the cars that are manufactured for E20, E30, E50, how it's happening in the US, how it's happening in Latin America right now, if that is happening, then it's a win-win situation. If the prices are correct.
So you're saying that because India mein to, I know for a fact that it's standard, whatever, like 100% fuel now, apart from a few states like you mentioned, it's all 20, E20 or E25. But you're saying in countries like LATAM, Brazil, you're saying that they have options of zero ethanol,
They have
10%?
options of zero ethanol, they have options of 5, 10, 25, 50, 85.
And that's, obviously the price would also be different.
It's going to be different. E85 is much cheaper. But then your car has to be compliant to E85.
Compliant.
If that's so, then it shouldn't be a problem.
Correct.
But if your car is not compliant to E85, it's burning your fuel rich. It does not have the correct sensors and machinery to burn that fuel in the correct manner. It is going to be more polluting. There are going to be carcinogenic emissions happening in the air. That's happening in the EU right now. EU pulled back the entire project. They've come back to E10. Because, because the cars which were not ethanol blend, or that high of ethanol blending compliant, they were emitting carcinogenic emissions. And hence they went back. They're like, we'll stick to E10. Similar situation was, similar things were tested in Latin American as well. That's why they have different options. In India, we are suffering because we have it as a compulsory fuel quality.
We don't have an option.
We don't have an option. Most of the cars are E0. Cars which are manufactured with BS4, except for Delhi NCR, everywhere else that we see with cars which are BS3, BS4, are E5 compliant at large, at max. Most of them are E0. They're not ethanol blending compliant. Cars manufactured by Maruti, cars manufactured by a few cars manufactured by Hyundai, they are E20 compliant or ready. Cars manufactured by Honda are E20 ready. But most of the models that they sell are not compliant. Mahindra even today, most of the cars that they manufacture are not E20 compliant completely.
Even today, the ones they're manufacturing?
So the automatic Thar Rocks Petrol is E10. They're still in transition.
Oh my God.
So that thing is something which worries the manufacturers. Can they question the government? No. Because then they have their own way of penalizing them.
And what kind of mechanical changes are required to be made by...
There are sensors, there are O-rings, there are rubber parts, there are the quality of the pipes, the fuel tank, all of that has changed. The fuel injection is calibrated because you require a lot more fuel to combust ethanol in general, because the E20 in comparison to E0 is 30% less energy dense.
Okay.
That's why we have a lot of feedback from people saying that my fuel economy has gone down. It would kill the fuel economy. It will kill the fuel economy.
I wonder why my car is giving 5 kilometers to the liter.
So even if it would have to give 5 kilometers to the liter, at least the cost of fuel should have gone down.
Correct.
To match up to the economics of ownership. That's not happening. So people are taking the burden. People are in a lot of problems because of this. But we also need to understand these are the people who would not protest. The demographic that consumes petrol cars at large are UHNIs or HNIs who have supercars that are not used on a regular basis, but they use XP100, which is E0. They can afford that. Then there are people from the middle class, people who are from the working class, people who are students, who have limited resources to function. They have a limited amount of money to fuel up their car, and they don't have the capacity and the power. And that's the realistic picture. They don't have the power and capacity to go out and protest against the government because they would be prosecuted on. They were wanting to push the same narrative with diesels. They wanted to get isobutanol in diesels as well. Okay. It did not happen because the majority of diesel consumers are transporters. And if the vehicles of these large-scale transporters are not compliant to diesel, which is not the case as of today. I don't think so there's any truck manufacturer or commercial vehicle manufacturer which is making isobutanol compliant trucks, tractors, and all these things. Then it's a problem for their ownership costs.
So you're saying isobutanol with diesel has the same effect of what ethanol has with petrol?
Of course.
Though isobutanol with diesel also has much lower calorific value.
Yes. And isobutanol is not going to come into effect because the transporter lobby is much larger than the ministry. They try to push it, but it cannot be done.
But tell me one thing, what do you think has been the gap? Chalo theek hai, ethanol rollout kiya for whatever reason, but what do you think has been the gap in terms of rolling ethanol out as a concept in India? How they did it and how they should have done it?
The fundamental problem is the source of fuel to the public is not compliant. If we see in Delhi NCR, so I have this company which manufactures fuel additives. It's called Triple Shot. You've used it. I use it on a regular. A lot of people have taken that up as their regular fuel additive now. We are doing a bit of a survey amongst a lot of fuel stations in Delhi NCR itself. And we found out that the underground tanks for most of these fuel stations are not designed to take the rancidity of ethanol-blended fuel. Now, when normal petrol was being filled in, or even E5 for that matter, the rancidity could not have been that much. And the circulation of fuel happens within 5 to 6 days, which is okay for 5% blending. But when we do 20% blending, that increases actually it compounds the problem of making the fuel acidic or rancid over a shorter period of time. So for example, I have a fuel pump somewhere in, let's say, Dwarka. And they get the fuel circulated every 6 to 7 days. Like they get the fuel tank emptied and then refilled again. So by that time, if there is any sort of moisture in the air, because ethanol is hygroscopic in nature, it attracts moisture, and over a very short period of time, it creates a layer of water under the fuel. So that is more skeptical to happen. And by the time that circulation happens, by the end of that cycle, almost 30 to 40% timeline of that cycle, when the fuel is pushed into the cars or bikes, that is already rancid, or it already has the components which can corrode the components of the vehicle.
Oh.
So that upgrade has not happened.
Okay.
The fuel nozzles, the pipes, their motors, their underground tanks, those have not been upgraded. Because most of the fuel pumps are 50, 60, 30-year-old. They're not, very few fuel pumps are brand new and functioning right now. Most of them are old. Even in Maharani Bagh or Ashram, we've got fuel pumps which are very, very old.
Purane, yeah.
Their underground tanks have not been removed or changed with their materials. They're still using the old materials. So the probability of the fuel getting rancid before supply is high. So fundamentally, we are already in a problem. And then is the case of material compliance with the vehicles. So it's that plus that which is compounding the issues within the consumers.
But then, I mean, why did they not, what's your take on why did they not roll out options? E0, E10, E15, E20, E30 and then a person has an option कि यार अगर मेरी गाड़ी compliant नहीं है तो मैं E0 डालूं.
6-letter word, profits. When, again, the minister in power has control over what is being supplied, profits is something that comes as a primary over problems. So it's for them what helps them with the funding, what helps them with the, creating their ecosystems and expanding their ecosystems. For people, it's going to be a problem.
So do you think people using ethanol-blended fuel, I mean, there are tons of people who are experiencing problems in their engines because, like as we discussed earlier, majority of the engines in India, even today, they are not ethanol compliant. Issues aayenge. So do you think because of that, people are considering a shift towards EV, looking at how suddenly, not just via Indian OEMs, but even Chinese OEMs, Germans and Japanese?
That's happening. EV is one thing which is currently, at least last year, it went on pretty good, but it has its own cons at large.
Like what?
Especially in a country like India, which already is energy deficient. We do not produce as much energy to power these EVs as the volumes we are projecting to sell amongst the population, which is already very high. We don't have the infrastructures to produce that huge amount of energy for people to use for EVs when we're not able to supply to tier 2, tier 3 and industries at large to function. One major setback that has happened for the government and why ethanol again was pushed is because in year 2020, before the COVID happened, the government was very confident about the entire electric vehicle project. In fact, it was happening globally that manufacturers claimed and announced that they would go completely electric by the year 2030. Globally, it had a rollback because of, again, energy deficiency. Secondly, the residual cost of owning an electric vehicle is very high. So economically, it's less viable.
Can you give me an example of that?
Right. So let's take an example of a car from Audi. One of my friends has it. Or the Porsche Taycan. When bought new, that car would have been about 2.1 CR with slight amount of options. By the time it turns 3 or 4 years old, which is the standard life cycle of an ownership of a high-end car, the price of that car drops to almost 50%.
Just the moment it is out of the showroom?
No, in 4 years' time, 3 to 4 years' time.
Okay.
Out of the showroom, again, it loses about 10% of the value. But by the time it reaches that 3 to 4 year threshold, it comes down to 50%. Secondly, the battery deteriorates with energy. Even if you've seen in your mobile phones, over 2 or 3 years of usage, your battery state of charge goes down to 70-75%. With cars, it's a similar situation, although there are warranties to cover it, but then there is a limitation to those warranties as well. They don't really supply you with a new battery unless there's some damage, which is manufacturing defect. So the residual cost of owning an EV is actually high. Okay. If you do cost-to-cost analysis of each and everything, unless you have a very small-scale EV and you don't really care about it. But at large, manufacturers are pushing high-end EVs, cars which are very complex, a little more expensive. The average price of electric vehicles in India right now, considering all the models, is somewhere around 35 lakh rupees of what we're getting right now, 35 to 40 lakh rupees. And that is a high price. And as we've seen, our per capita income is about 2.5-3 lakhs per annum. But most of the EV consumers, what we've seen is they earn anywhere about 6 to 7 lakh rupees per annum that they have. These are the people who would want good residual value, who would want their opportunity cost to be sustained, which is another thing that I would want to discuss. And they would want something which is more economical largely. Electric vehicles to charge at home are economical, provided you have the right infrastructure. You have permissions from the government and your RWAs to charge your car at home. At fast chargers, it is almost as expensive as a petrol or diesel car.
Really?
There's only 30% difference.
Okay.
Not much.
You've experienced that? Can you give me an example?
I had a BMW i5 M60 last year around the same time. I took it up to Shimla. My cost to go from here till there was somewhere around, we had a 100 kilowatt hour battery. So 100 kilowatt hour per kilowatt hour, I was paying about 2,400, 2,500 rupees at a fast charger.
Per kilowatt hour?
25 rupees per 25 rupees per kilowatt hour is what you pay at fast chargers.
Okay.
That comes out to be around 2,000 to 2,400 rupees collectively. That's what I paid.
Okay.
Plus there are parking charges. Plus the opportunity cost that you're spending 2 to 3 hours at a charging station. Another trouble is, if by any chance there are the charging stations are not working, then you're stuck. So now we come to the opportunity cost. That is really high with electric cars. Until or unless you're not using it locally, where you should technically be using those electric cars. And you are wanting to take it on long trips. People do it. There is a percentage of people who do it successfully. They plan it really well. But the opportunity cost is too much. You are spending time on planning. You are spending time at charging stations. You have a value of stress in your head that if the chargers would work or not. You have stress if anything happens to the electronics, you're kaput and you're standing in the middle of nowhere. There are so many problems with electric cars. They are great for the environment because of zero emissions. Okay. There are residual values for manufacturing. Electric cars are polluting during manufacturing. They are polluting during recycling. That has to be considered as well. But at the user level, it is non-polluting. But that non-polluting vehicle has a huge opportunity cost that most of the people who are above a certain pay scale don't want to take. That's why the targeted sale of electric cars that was there about 5 years ago from today, what the government targeted for 2025, that's halfway through 2030, which most of the manufacturers claim to be the year of the electrics, it was not even 10%. Of the sales that happened. There's still car manufacturers. There are car manufacturers like Mercedes-Benz. They have a lot of electric cars. They still had unsold stock from 2024 and 2025.
EVs.
That they were selling off a 40% discount. Because people understood the actual value addition an EV would do to them. Cars like the MG Comet, they work the best. Because that's great for local commute. You want to go from point A to point B, you want to spend the least amount of money, go for that. But any car which is more expensive or would be used for important work or important meetings, people started detesting away from them. And again, economically, financially, it made less sense. So people started going back to electrics. There are hybrids, which are coming out to be a very viable option now. There's a huge demand for hybrids. Now there are manufacturers, because of policies that we would speak about, that are being pushed out of the showrooms. So instead of electrics, people are now considering getting hybrids. So electric cars at large have taken a huge hit. And again, it's a compounding impact that's happening. Although manufacturers get certain benefits on selling EVs, but they are pushed to get those benefits to sell their petrol and diesel cars even today.
But tell me one quick question when you mentioned about hybrids. And I totally agree with you. According to me, cars like the Camry hybrid,
one of the best.
The Honda City hybrid. And why City hybrid? Because it's a strong hybrid. High Cross, it's a good hybrid, but I still feel that High Cross being a hybrid, giving a fuel efficiency of 15, 14 is not sufficient. I feel a strong hybrid should give at least a little over 21, 22 kmpl. Only then it makes sense to buy a hybrid. Otherwise, to diesel le lo.
No, but the fuel economy with hybrids has gone down because of E20 fuel. You're using a naturally aspirated petrol motor.
Right.
So when you have E20 fuel, even if you put XP95, the energy density is still low. You do not have
Okay.
enough condensed or cold air like turbocharged engines have. You don't have enough cold air to have that combustion happening in a more cleaner way, more richer way. That's why your fuel economy has gone down.
So you're saying if with the high cross, let's say if I use triple shot, because I saw a difference.
Even if you use XP100 in your high cross,
Huh.
just for testing basis, just E0, you would have an increase in fuel economy by 20-25%.
Okay. Okay.
And that is a problem that a lot of car manufacturers have been facing. There are people working on it. This E20 thing again, we're talking E20, we already have E25 rolled out in the market, which people are not aware of. And all of these operations are happening silently.
On that, tell me one thing. Like I said, I completely agree that hybrid is a great proposition. Why is it that in India we only have 1 or 2 plug-in hybrids? Because I personally feel plug-in hybrids is a fantastic proposition. But why is it that it's only there in cars like the XM and probably the M5? M5 is a plug-in hybrid. M5 is a plug-in hybrid. BMW M5.
Volvo was wanting to bring their plug-in hybrid, but it would have become very expensive. They would eventually bring in because there's a demand for it.
Right.
Plug-in hybrid as a technology is very expensive because you're integrating technology of an EV with a smaller battery, of course, or a little larger battery than the strong hybrids, plus a combustion engine into a car. And India is a price-conscious country. But we can install this in cars at about 50-55 lakh rupees, but then it needs awareness. It needs demand for it. For
but
the
यार एक बात
manufacturers to
बता
come.
ना, M5 when it was not plug-in hybrid, the generation before this one, it was a completely ICE engine. How much was the M5 for that time?
2.3 crores.
2.3, and today the plug-in hybrid M5 is for how much? Same. So had it been like what you're saying, I'm trying to being the devil's advocate, to be very honest.
No, I'm talking about the middle classes car, the regular cars. Of course, top of the line cars which are CBU'd, the cars that come from Europe, they have their own carbon credits. So if you have hybrid cars that are being manufactured, all these manufacturers get carbon credits for having a strong hybrid car, which has better fuel economy. That all comes under CAFE norms. So CAFE norms is again something which helps manufacturers build cars like the i5 M60, for example. It has a similar power, electric, almost an M5 category in terms of dynamics and power generation. Sold at a very low price. It's what, 1.2, 1.1 CR in India?
There are deals going on for 85 lakhs.
Imagine. And M5...
I would buy one tomorrow.
M5... with that technology, with plug-in hybrid technology, is cheaper to purchase in India or anywhere in the world is because when it's being manufactured, BMW gets carbon credits from CAFE to lower up or subsidize the cost.
So they kind of counter the car's price with that.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes so much sense, dude. I mean, even if I'm paying, let's say, although I'm not going to buy an M5, sorry BMW, but even if that car was, let's say, at a discount, some offers were going on, instead of 2.2 CR, I get a good deal at, let's say, 1.7, 1.6 CR. With the fuel economy, with the kind of power figures the M5 is giving, the driving dynamics, and a fuel economy of what, 45, 50 kilometers to the liter? Dude, it's insane.
See, there is going to be a shift towards strong hybrids and plug-in hybrids in India in the next 5 years, which I'm projecting. There are brands which have now woken up, mass market brands like Hyundai and Kia. I was there at a conference very recently for these Korean giants. And they particularly were very, very serious about bringing hybrids this year. Although they are late to the party, Toyota and Maruti Suzuki are already over there selling good numbers with their High Rider and High Cross, which are relatively nicer cars. But Hyundai as a mass market player, Kia as a mass market player really have to pull up their socks because CAFE 3 norms are coming into play by the end of 2026 or the starting of 2027, which would significantly impact these manufacturers' sales and numbers because they're very, very strict policies that are being pushed down to them. They have to bring in hybrids, they have to bring in strong hybrids that would eventually replace their proper petrol cars. So pure petrols could be a thing of the past in the coming years. Diesels, again, because of the new CAFE norms, are going to be obsolete. That is going to happen.
Okay.
I mean, if you go in accordance to what the CAFE 3 norms say, diesels would be pushed out.
But why are they doing it? Because I remember one of these, a few days ago, me and you, we were having a conversation about diesels, and you mentioned that BS6 diesel versus BS6 petrol. I'm talking about normal passenger vehicles, passenger cars. BS6 diesels, the fumes coming out of the exhaust pipe, eventually, I mean, after the whole urea thing happening in the catalytic converter, it's actually less polluting than a BS6 petrol. Is that true?
That's true. It's about 2.3 times lower in terms of emission than a BS6 petrol car because of the urea that's being sprayed onto the emitting pollutants.
And if you can put a number in terms of kilograms of
That's much
CO2.
less. It's almost, so let's take an example of the Kia Seltos diesel versus the Kia Seltos petrol turbo.
Okay.
The Seltos petrol turbo would be making anywhere around 120 to 125 grams per kilometer.
Okay.
At the same time,
Of carbon monoxide.
the entire emission, CO2 emission that is there. Diesel would be down to 85,
What?
90. That is a fact with BS6. At least in 2.0, they've actually made the DPF filters very, very strong. And that's why we have diesel cars which are much less emitting than petrol cars in terms of the SO2, SOX and NOx emissions.
So I was actually not intending to ask you this question in this podcast, but then if that is the thing, then what is the whole drama behind diesel engines, the end of life
Profits.
thing that diesel engines have to be, at least in Delhi, diesel engines have to be scrapped off after 10 years and petrol engines have a life of 15 years.
CAFE 3 norms would have DPF removed.
Okay. What is CAFE norms? Can you give me the full form?
CAFE norms is cumulative average fuel economy. It's a policy or let's say certain rules that are set for manufacturers to follow. So with CAFE 2, it was 113 grams per kilometer of CO2 that cumulatively all the models that a manufacturer sells. So for example, there is Toyota. It sells certain cars which are large engined, like the Fortuner, the Innova Crista, the Land Cruiser. They emit a lot of carbon dioxide in emissions. They don't have the same DEF systems, especially the Land Cruiser, because it's an imported car. Their emissions cannot be more than 113 grams per kilometer according to CAFE, which is a bar set with conjugation of the government or the MORTH. So to make it less compromised, they had done a JV with Maruti Suzuki. They got in cars which are strong hybrid, mild hybrid, like the Glanza, the Tizor, the Highrider, and the Highcross. So these are the products that are manufactured in JV, strong hybrid products, make less than 80 grams per kilometer of CO2. So when you take both the sides of the mainstream Toyota products and Maruti JV Toyota products together, they cumulatively come to 113 grams per kilometer. So if by any chance this CO2 emission is higher than what is prescribed, there is a fine or a penalty per unit sold. So if this wouldn't have happened, your Innova Crista would have costed over 40 lakh rupees. That no one would have purchased.
So would it be right for me to say that this is one of the reasons why Toyota and Maruti shook hands?
Yeah. And they're bringing this one also. So something which has a Toyota badge of the e-Vitara. I'm forgetting the name.
Already chal raha hai, wo to 2 saal se chal raha hai इनका.
So for every electric car a car manufacturer makes, they get carbon credits equivalent to 2 or 3 cars, according to CAFE.
Come again.
So for every electric car, so for example, Toyota has all these cars, and they manufacture an electric car in between, which has 0 emissions. So they get carbon credit of not just one car, they get a cumulative carbon credit of 2 cars rather than 1. So they get benefit of 2 cars instead of 1 if they manufacture 1 electric car.
Why?
That's the rule. It's silly, but it's there.
Okay.
That's what CAFE norms say. But CAFE 3, it'll increase to 2.5 or 3
एक के
cars.
साथ एक free.
हाँ. So basically, उसके जो numbers हैं वो 2 गाड़ियों के लगेंगे 1 नंबर गाड़ी की जगह.
Okay.
So that's how CAFE works. Henceforth, Hyundai came up with electrics. Kia came up with electrics. Mahindra is going mad with electrics because most of their cars emit more than 150, 160 grams of kilometer. They've got the XUV 700 and the Thar Rocks and the Scorpio Ns, which have large engines, less fuel economical, and they emit a lot. So that's why they're very strong with their electrics. Fortunately, they're doing good with it. Same as with Tata. Any large SUV manufacturer right now would have to confine to getting electrics in their portfolio to make sure that their mainstream products sell without penalties. That's what CAFE norms say.
Okay.
So the fuel economy component of this was about 4.2 liters per 100 kilometer that has to be maintained. For CAFE, so ARAI tests the fuel economies, and the fuel economy has to be somewhere between 24 to 25 cumulatively across the board. So if it's not happening, then you have to have an electric car in between. Now with CAFE 3, what's going to happen is 3.1 liters per 100 kilometers. That is almost close to 33 kilometers to the liter that the manufacturer has to maintain. So for that, either they go mad with electric car manufacturing and supply, or they push their petrol and diesel cars to go fully strong hybrid. And this is the trend that we will see in the next 5 years because the CAFE 3 norms are coming into play with BS7, which is equivalent to that.
That actually intrigues me about one question. Do diesel strong hybrids exist?
BMW had it internationally with the 5 Series. They had it with the X5.
Diesel hybrids?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just that because it was never required in the EU, it never became popular. But eventually, I guess, with the kind of demand that India has for diesels, manufacturers would be pushed to develop a strong hybrid for diesel as well.
I mean, talking about the demand and the love, I would say, for turbo diesel engines in India.
Because mild hybrid is already there.
I'm surprised as to why they should have probably brought in the diesel hybrids first. And the petrol hybrids later. पहली बात तो वैसे ही diesel turbo engines, they give such fantastic fuel economy. Plus अगर तेरे हाथ में गाड़ी वो लग जाए तो वो और 50% ज़्यादा माइलेज दे देती है. I have no idea how the hell you drive the cars that you get.
Got 19 to 20 kmpl in a Golf GTI.
Just imagine.
Over 150 kilometers.
So, if diesel cars, I remember you were driving the car engine, what, 26 kilometers to the liter, 25?
28.
28 kilometers to the liter. A pure turbo diesel engine. Just imagine a hybrid turbo diesel engine. The kind of numbers we're talking about.
I got almost 16 kmpl from Delhi to Binsar and back in a Land Cruiser. So, I mean, again, it's just a challenging situation for me because, of course, you can drive fast, but can you drive efficiently? That's a challenge. So that's what I give to myself, and I stress myself out to beans. But it's a fun activity to do. But coming back to the situation, this is going to become a huge trend. I hope, and I pray diesels stay for longer because I myself, I'm a huge diesel lover. And I've become one in the last 3 years since I've had some diesel cars in my press fleet for long terms, and they were absolutely fantastic. They save a lot of money. I had a Kia Carens for a very long time, and fantastic car. Seats 7 with comfort, gives great fuel economy, does well for me. And I mean, even for the economy of the country, diesels are the backbone. You can't kill it.
Yeah.
At best you can do is, as a car manufacturer with all the brains, all the resources that you have, get great diesel hybrids in the market.
I wish they do. I truly wish
India has to be the pioneer of doing that. And I think with the kind of demands and the kind of policies that are shoved down our throat, especially with E20 into play and how petrols are being killed side by side without us knowing much.
Yeah.
Diesel hybrid should be a huge thing in India.
I can't think of a reason why not. I mean,
imagine pushing EVs and then seeing diesel cars being sold more. That should be a game. That should be a game all of us car enthusiasts would be also even not just enthusiasts, just, I mean, people in the mass market as well. Imagine cars giving 40, 45 kmpl, great fuel economy, cheaper ownership costs. What a huge impact they will make.
Huge impact. Huge
And
impact.
manufacturers would monetize on this, and I'm sure there are talks happening within the different mass market manufacturers in India. But how soon and how urgent that's going to happen is what we're about to see.
And we are in a world we could never have even imagined. I mean, what I'm trying to say is ki, I'll give you an example. Very recently, I was just chilling with a friend at a parking lot. A Scorpio, not N-Line, the previous M-Hawk.
M-Hawk.
It just came behind me. Boss, I'm not kidding. I could barely hear the engine.
So they have refined quite a bit.
Unbelievably refined. Matlab, you can't hear those engines these days.
No wonder
Diesel.
Mahindra is selling in such first world countries now, except like Maruti, Suzuki, and Tata is unable to do that right now. Mahindra is selling it in Australia, in countries which have really high quality cars. For that manufacturer to be at that level is a huge deal. The way Mahindra shows urgency with their product, their quality, their manufacturing processes to be at the global scale and level in terms of quality, it's very, very impressive.
Yeah, but one thing is there, I can tell you, a small correction I'd like to give. Maruti is exporting very large volumes across the globe. And now, I mean, because I keep traveling every now and then, people have started admiring. Pehle wo game alag tha.
Yeah, Maruti is doing great. In fact, that is one manufacturer.
Dude, Maruti is exporting cars to Japan.
No, that's
We are in this kind of a world जहाँ पहले जापान से गाड़ियाँ import होती थी, वहाँ हम यहाँ से गाड़ियाँ बना के भेज रहे हैं.
The cost of
Maruti is doing
manufacturing
big
in India
volumes.
is much less, no? The labor cost, the resource cost.
And that tells me a lot about the kind of standards Maruti is able to maintain, because exporting to Japan without those standards, it's close to impossible.
No, that's also one of the things that I'm really impressed about Maruti Suzuki, although I've had a very compromised relationship with them in the last 4 years, is that the scale of improvement that they've had
Superb.
with their products is very impressive. And secretly, I really want them to get to a level where at global scale, they are the flag bearers of Indian automotive engineering. Like, people should know, like, people know Mahindra right now. People are aware that Mahindra at a global scale is the A1 manufacturer for cars that are Indian, the SUVs, which are absolutely fantastic. Maruti should be there. It is a long, arduous process.
Yeah.
They are on the right path.
Yeah.
They are bringing products which are at a global scale, although there are criticisms around them for good reasons. But then I'm glad they've taken the criticism and, you know, put them into the right use and made products more polished, safer, much better to use, more reliable. So it's happening. I think that sort of a motive that they have in their brain is going to work wonders for them.